The scent of cedar and old wool was a sudden punch to Eleanor's chest. 6 months since the funeral, yet sorting through her late husband's closet felt like a profound betrayal. Her fingers brushed against something cold, hard, and metallic hidden deep within. Resting in her trembling palm was a heavy, ornate brass key. It belonged to Arthur. He had worn that exact coat on his final, abrupt trip to London, a business trip he claimed was merely routine. The key was highly unusual, an antique with a complex double-bitted shaft and a heavy head cast in the shape of a blooming rose. Eleanor stared at it, her heart beating a little faster against her ribs. Arthur was a creature of absolute habit, a retired accountant who kept his life transparent. He simply didn't do secrets, or so she had believed for 42 years. Driven by a sudden, desperate curiosity, Eleanor began a methodical sweep of their home. She started with the obvious targets: the heavy oak front door, the side entrance, the cellar padlock. She moved to the interior. She tried the mahogany desk in Arthur's study, the old steamer trunks in the attic. Nothing. The key slid into none of the keyholes, remaining a heavy, useless enigma in her hand. By evening, a creeping sense of deep unease had entirely replaced her initial curiosity. If the key didn't belong to their home, what exactly did it open? And why was it hidden so carefully? Sleep entirely eluded her that night. Every creak of the old house sounded like heavy footsteps. When dawn finally broke, Eleanor had made a firm decision. She would not let this mystery fester. Her first stop that morning was the First National Bank. Arthur had kept a secure, safe deposit box there. Surely, she reasoned, this strange antique was the key to a secondary private box he had never mentioned. The bank manager shook his head. They used standard modern keys for their vaults. This key, he noted with a frown, looked European, perhaps late 19th century. Disappointed and growing increasingly paranoid, Eleanor left the bank. A sudden chill ran down her spine. She stopped and glanced at the reflection in a bakery window. A dark sedan was idling directly across the street. Seeking immediate refuge, she ducked into the local police precinct. It was there she bumped into a familiar face. Seeing Eleanor's pale face and trembling hands, Detective Jenkins gently guided the older woman into a quiet office. Eleanor poured out the entire story: the coat, the key, the strange trip to London, and the unsettling feeling of being followed. Jenkins insisted on escorting Eleanor home, a gesture that proved to be terrifyingly necessary. As they pulled into the driveway, Eleanor gasped out loud. The front door of her home was standing wide open, splintered. They stepped inside carefully. The house had been completely ransacked. Couch cushions were slashed open, cherished books thrown from their shelves, and drawers emptied.
The intruder had entirely bypassed the antique silver, the modern electronics, and Eleanor's valuable jewelry box. They were looking for something highly specific. "The key," Eleanor whispered, her hand flying to her purse. The heavy brass object lay hidden. Jenkins quickly secured the perimeter of the house. She called for a forensics team. While they worked, Eleanor sat shivering at the kitchen table, her mind racing with dark possibilities. Who was her husband, really? What had he brought back from London that was worth destroying her sanctuary for? Determined to fight back, Eleanor returned to Arthur's wrecked study once the police left. She knelt by his overturned desk, running her fingers along the splintered mahogany. She remembered how protective he had been of this desk, polishing it every Sunday. Underneath the bottom drawer, her fingers found a slight, almost imperceptible irregularity. A hidden false panel. Prying it open with a silver letter opener, she found a small ledger. Inside, lists of offshore accounts and a single bolded address in London: Blackwood Antiquities. Eleanor didn't hesitate. She booked a flight to London that evening, informing only Detective Jenkins of her impulsive plan. The young detective sensed grave danger. She insisted on using her vacation time to accompany the elderly widow across the Atlantic. 2 days later, they stood in the freezing, drizzling London rain outside Blackwood Antiquities. It was sandwiched between two bustling modern cafes, its tall windows opaque with grime. A faded wooden sign hung crookedly above the peeling door. A brass bell chimed a hollow note. As they stepped inside, the shop was a claustrophobic labyrinth of ticking grandfather clocks, tarnished silver tea sets, and looming wooden wardrobes. The stale air smelled strongly of beeswax. rust and decaying paper. From the deepest shadows emerged a solitary figure. Elias Thorne, a man in his late 60s, leaning heavily on a wooden cane with a tarnished brass handle. "I've been expecting you, Mrs. Vance," Elias croaked, his voice like dry leaves. "Arthur always said you were an incredibly resourceful woman." I see he wasn't lying. Elias calmly revealed the painful, shocking truth. Arthur hadn't been an accountant. He was a master cleaner for an underground syndicate that smuggled stolen antiquities. Arthur had desperately wanted out to protect Eleanor, but he had stolen one final, priceless item. "The key doesn't fit a door, Eleanor," Elias stated, stepping closer, his cane thumping. "It winds a clock. A very specific 16th century French automaton clock. Arthur hid it somewhere in this room before he died. We need it back. Hand over the key." Suddenly, the front door burst open. Two burly, silent men in dark suits rushed in, blocking the only exit. Elias smiled grimly, showing yellowed teeth. "I'm afraid negotiation is no longer an option, ladies. Give me the key right now." Detective Jenkins moved with lightning speed, overturning a massive oak table, to create a makeshift barricade while simultaneously drawing her weapon. "Metropolitan Police," she bluffed loudly, hoping the chaos would buy them precious seconds. The shop erupted into a terrifying maze of shattered glass and splintering wood as the men advanced. Amidst the screaming and chaos, Eleanor spotted it, a massive, ornate French clock, tucked away in the darkest corner of the shop, its face adorned with a brass rose, entirely identical to the key's head. While Jenkins bravely held the men at bay, Eleanor lunged for the clock, sliding the key into the winding hole, and turning it with all her remaining might. The antique clock sprang to life. With a loud mechanical whir, its intricate front panel springing open to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside was the true prize, a master ledger containing names, dates, and powerful buyers. Of every stolen artifact, the ultimate evidence to bring down the syndicate. As real police sirens wailed in the distance, signaled secretly by Jenkins, Eleanor realized Arthur had left her not just a terrifying mystery, but the key to dismantling an empire, and finally clearing his name.